Happy Monday. I hope everyone is well, staying safe. We sincerely appreciate you guys taking the time to, on your Monday, to hear from, in my opinion, and many others, one of the probably top, smartest, most strategic giving media executives in the industry. Michael Smith is the Chief Marketing Officer for NPR, and I'm sure I don't have to explain NPR, but I was looking at their website and I liked what they said about themselves. They said they're an independent nonprofit media organization that was founded on a mission to create a more informed public. I thought that was pretty cool. Kind of reminds me of C-SPAN's purpose as well, but you know, in that area. Welcome, Michael. He is, again, in my opinion, and to many others, a superstar media executive. He has been in the industry for over 30 years, doing things like in the entertainment brand, marketing, content, digital, and revenue generating extensions. He created and launched over 80 TV series and was responsible for the likes of Cooking Channel and Food Network, two of my favorites that I continue to watch to this day. In addition, he created many successful marketing campaigns and extended TV brands to consumer products and experiences. And he was just talking about his college days where he earned his MBA in marketing and finance from UC Berkeley's Haas School of Business and received his bachelor degree in science, technology, and society from Stanford University. Not too shabby. You know, one of the greatest things for me personally is I get to meet people like Michael, and beyond that, I also get to work with people like Michael. So he has been an integral part in one-day immersion since we launched, and actually even before we launched. He is one of the things that he told me a while ago was one of the reasons he likes to participate in these kinds of things is because he loves to engage with you, our future leaders, and wants to know what's on your mind. And he wants you to teach him, you know, a thing or two. So I think that's pretty cool. So at this time, I would love for you to please welcome Michael Smith.
Thanks, Dolly. I'm just doing a little screen grab. I always take the screen grabs of my Zoom meetings because it helps me remember the people I talk to, especially when people follow up. I just wanted to give a little background of who I am and what led up to today. I'm the child of Jamaican immigrants. My parents are both left Jamaica when they were in their late teens, like young adults, and they moved to Canada. And I was born in Canada and grew up there till I was about 3 years old. And then I moved back to Jamaica with my family, where I lived until I was about 9 years old. And then I moved to the United States after that. And one of the things that stuck with me is I've always been, or I always felt like I was an outsider. When I was in Canada, it was sort of weird because I'm a Jamaican kid in Western Canada. So I didn't really fit in there. And then when I went back to Jamaica, I didn't really fit in because I was a kid in Jamaica with a Canadian accent who didn't talk like all the other Jamaican kids. Then I came to the United States, and I was sort of a Jamaican Canadian kid and living in a tiny town in southwestern Michigan with my parents, with my family. So I've always realized that a lot of what people think about you is based on preconceptions created more by media and things that they've seen than by actually having met people like you in their lives, in their real lives. And so that really made me realize the power of media from an early age. And then the other thing that touched me was that, I was often the new kid in school, didn't have as many friends. It didn't feel like people were really paying attention to me or listening to hearing my voice as much. But the one place they did seem to pay attention was when I started taking photos for the school paper, and I started making some short little documentary films about high school life, and I started writing music, and I learned to play guitar, and I was playing in a rock band. And when I started doing just school plays and just things related to media and entertainment, I felt like I had a stage to have a voice to be heard. And so, put all that together, and I really wanted to go into media and entertainment. So I also loved science and technology. I was always fascinated by science and just how it impacted media and entertainment, just from the invention of the electric guitar, how that changed rock and roll music, or the invention of cable television, how that changed the way people watch television. I was always fascinated by that. So when I was an undergraduate, I designed a major called Science, Technology, and Society, which now, years later, is actually a department at Stanford called STS. When I was a student, I started my own student group called the Campus Entertainment Board. And the Campus Entertainment Board was about just a few of us trying to figure out just kind of interesting entrepreneurial ways to bring entertainment to campus. So we did everything from like getting rock bands from the San Francisco area to come down to play concerts at school. We had stand-up comics come down and do shows. We put on all kinds of events. We got sponsorship from local companies and restaurants. But my big break was I got an internship at Channel 4 KRON TV in San Francisco, and spent a couple of summers there, and that was really my entree into the business. And then when I was at Berkeley, I got an internship at Ogilvy and Mather Advertising in New York, which is really my first exposure to New York. And it kind of, that has really stayed with me in terms of when I think about things like ODI, because having access to the people who are in the industry, who have the knowledge and the relationships that can get you exposure, and then just the information about what kinds of careers and what kinds of jobs and what kinds of paths people have taken, is something that a lot of people, especially if you're more of an outsider, your dad didn't work for CBS, or your mom didn't work for Fox or something. It's harder to get that that access. So I was very fortunate through those internship programs to have that access, and that's how I got in the industry. And so I've always felt just a responsibility to try to pay it, I guess, pay it back or pay it forward, or to people that are coming up. In my career, when I got to New York, actually, after my internship, then I went back to Berkeley, and then I graduated, and I moved to New York and started working for a company called Young and Rubicam Advertising, which is a big ad agency at the time. And I spent about a year and a half there. And then I got a job at CBS Television. And then I went to Disney Channel after that. And those three, I want to give it's interesting to think about how you get jobs, and I think it even holds true today. There were three very different ways. The job at Young and Rubicam was while I was an intern at Ogilvy. And that summer, I had met some other interns who then introduced me to who were working at other agencies. We had these little intern cocktail nights after work. And then I met somebody who was interning at another agency, who introduced me to a HR person at that agency. And that's what led to getting an interview at that agency. When I went from the agency to CBS, it was actually going to my college roommate's wedding, and on the flight back, sitting next to somebody who actually worked at CBS, and just striking up a conversation with them. It was just a lucky break. I noticed this man sitting next to me was reading a copy of Broadcasting Magazine, and I just asked him where he worked, and we started talking, and then he told me that there might be an opening in his department, and I should call their HR department, and it just worked out. So, and then when I went to Disney Channel after a couple of years at CBS, I was reading that same Broadcasting Magazine, and there was a classified ad. This kind of generations before you guys, but there was an ad in the magazine for a job at Walt Disney Television, and I sent my resume in for that job. But if they didn't want me for that job, the resumes kind of, I guess, floated around for a couple of months, and then 3 months later, I got this random call for to interview for a job at Disney Channel, which was at the time a relatively new cable network. So it just shows that there's no magic bullet. You know, it can be relationships, it can be luck, it can be ads. So I always tell people, you just like a good marketing campaign, you have to try many different tactics to get jobs. When I was at Disney Channel, I started my career my first job in television was in what's called affiliate relations or distribution. And I'll talk a little bit later about the different roles within the media industry, but it was a job about helping the network get its programming on local television stations, broadcast stations. And then I went to a similar role at Disney Channel, which was helping the Disney Channel get its channel on local cable systems around the country. And those were interesting jobs in the sense that I got to travel a lot and learn a lot about the industry, but I really didn't get to do a lot of creative work. And I've always been sort of a combination creative and strategic person. And, you know, as I mentioned before, I played in a rock band. And when I was living in New York, working for Disney, I had a side business where I was taking headshots and portfolio pictures for up and coming actors and models, and I was recording music. And so I didn't feel like my job was giving me the creative outlet that I really wanted. And just through a lucky break, actually, this other guy who was a frustrated Broadway actor who was also working in sales. I mean, we had these sales jobs by day, and then at night we would go to our second lives. We had this wacky idea to write like a little spoof musical play about the life of a salesperson. And we got some other employees to participate in it, and we performed it at a Disney sales meeting in Arizona one year. And just by, I think, the combination of some people from the LA studio seeing that show, and also people knowing about my outside, work creative stuff, I got tapped to move to LA and be the creative director for Disney Channel. So it was a lesson that showed me that, even if the role that you're in shouldn't define who you are. You may be like a really creative person, but you're working in accounting, or you may be a really analytical person who's working in creative. You should always have a vision of like who you think you want to be and what you want to do, and not let the job define whatever job role that you're in. And if your job isn't fulfilling everything that you want to do, there's so many other things that you can do outside of work to keep sharpening your sword of skills. So after Disney Channel, what happened to Disney Channel? I guess I ended up working there for about 6 years, and then I came to New York and worked for a network called Food Network, which was also relatively new at the time. And I was the first creative director, sort of advertising creative person. We designed everything from designing the logo of the company, the look and the feel, basically all the communications that you see coming out of Food Network. I led the team that did that. And then ultimately got more involved in the actual brand marketing of Food Network. And then as we extended the business, Food Network started out as just a TV channel about cooking shows. But most media brands, I think, aspire to kind of follow the Disney model, which is you create this affinity around your brand and your intellectual property and your shows, your hosts, your talent, your characters. And you can go beyond just the TV show itself and create all kinds of other businesses. And Disney's obviously the perfect example. They take, they start with a character in an animated movie, and it becomes toys, it becomes books, it becomes home videos, TV shows, it becomes a theme park, experiences, games. And so for Food Network, we tried to do the same thing. And we created a Food Network magazine, we created Food Network restaurants, we created cookware, we created actually wine, even went as far as creating Food Network scented candles, which was kind of ill-fated, but if you can imagine candles that smelled like your favorite foods. So we had pancake flavored candles. But anyway, the idea was to extend the Food Network brand into multiple touch points. And one of the other extensions was we had taken Food Network to be away from being a cooking channel to being more of an entertainment channel. I think if you watch Food Network now, you'll see it's mostly competition shows and reality shows and less food information. And so one of the ideas was that I had was that in addition to Food Network, we could go back and create a channel called Cooking Channel that would be really more for the next generation of people super interested in food, more go after millennials and Gen Zs with a different take, kind of a younger take than what you see with Rachel Ray and Bobby Flay So I worked on launching that network and creating content for it and marketing and branding for it. And then my last job with Scripps Networks, which is the company that owns Food Network and Cooking Channel and HGTV and Travel Channel, was to help the company evolve into over-the-top streaming television, because there's been a transition. I mean, as you guys all know, I mean, the two big constant changes in the media industry, if you go back to the early history of it, have been the change in the technology used to transmit and distribute the content. And then the other, we've gone from broadcast television, over the air where there were 3 or 4 channels, to a world of cable television through cables to your home, to now television on the internet. And each time you make these technological leaps, it really disrupts and changes the industry. So companies that are very successful in one era have a hard time making it to the next era. For example, Food Network and Cooking Channel, if it wasn't for cable, they wouldn't be around. They weren't, food shows were on regular television back in the 1970s and 80s, but cable created an opportunity for those channels. But now with streaming, we face challenges because there are a lot of food shows on Netflix and on Hulu and on Amazon. So I worked on that, and our company got acquired by the Discovery company. And when big companies get bought by other companies, often the senior executives at those companies get kicked out. So that's what happened to me. But every move, I think, is an opportunity to do new things. Because one of the things that I had really wanted to focus on as I was getting later in my career was this issue of changing audiences, and the fact that America has changed demographically so dramatically in the last 50 years, and I think media has not caught up. I feel like when I was a kid in elementary school in the 1970s, America was about 83% white and 17% non-white, and mostly like 11% African American, maybe 6% Latinx, and a couple percent Asian. And you look at America today, and it's 60% white and 40% diverse. And if you look at people, in your generation, it's about 50-50. So the country has really changed. And when you look at the content on television, you look at this, whether it's the people who work at the networks, whether it's the shows, the showrunners, the writers, the producers, and even the shows that are made, I just don't see them reflecting the way America looks. And so it was something that I wanted to really focus on in my next role. So I did some consulting work on some projects to kind of push that forward. Actually, one of them was kind of ill-fated for a company called Condé Nast, which has a channel called, has a video channel called Bon Appetit. And I tried to work with them to diversify their content, and they didn't follow the recommendations. I think if you guys Google it, you'll see that they've been going through a lot of trouble with these issues. But when the NPR opportunity came up, it was a perfect opportunity, I think, for me, because I'm a big fan of the brand, but also I was going to say we, since I'm there now, we realized that, we've always been about making a better society by making smarter and more enriched people. And the belief is that if you have a more enriched populace, it's a better America to live in. The problem that we've had, though, I think, is that our audience and our content is really out of sync with America. And for a mission-driven company, I think we started to recognize that we're really off track. And NPR's audience, if you look at their radio shows, like All Things Considered and Morning Edition, it's about 80% white and only 20% diverse. The median age is about 55 years old of the listeners. Even our podcasts, which are much younger in their audience base, are still not very diverse. I think it's like less than 18% of our podcast audience is non-white. So our big priority is to reach a much more diverse and more reflective audience and include more voices. And so when I heard that that's what NPR wanted to do, it was just a perfect opportunity for me to do something that was consistent with what I wanted to do as a person. One of the things I like to talk about, and people ask me a lot of times, is when you look back at your career, what are some of the key lessons that you've learned? And for me, there are about 6 or 7 really key things that stand out. The first one is taking time to find your passion and then picking a lane. And what I mean by that is that, people will always say, find your passion or follow your passion. And I think that is good that people tend to work harder and do better when they are doing things that they love. But it can take a while, and I think a lot of people don't find their passions immediately. It may take you to you're 30 years old to figure it out, maybe to you're 40. So I wouldn't overly pressure yourself. I think you do a few different jobs, and maybe I always tell people in your 30 or your 20s, maybe it's 2 years here, 2 years there, 2 years there, and by the time you get to your end of your 20s, you kind of figure out which lane you want to be in, and then stay in it. If you decide you want to be a sales executive, salesperson, you want to stay in the sales and marketing area, then do that. You want to be in the content area, stay in that. Or you want to stay in legal or accounting, stay in that. It can hurt your career, I think, if you bounce around too much and become sort of a jack of all trades, but not a master of anything. So that's the first lesson. Second lesson is the importance of relationships. There's a Maya Angelou quote where she talks about people, will forget what you said and forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And I think that is so true, because as you go through your career, how you treat people and your reputation for relationships is really the most important thing that you have to take with you. People will forget, what show you worked on or what ad campaign you did or whatever. But when they hear your name, it is a brand that says something about how people feel about you. And relationships are so important because, especially in a business like in media and entertainment, that's often very subjective, and what's good, what's not good, what's a quality show, what's not a quality show. A lot of it comes down to how people feel about you and feel about your work. So that's important. The third thing is lifelong learning, and this is an idea that somebody told me when I was a college student, was that, and I think it's true now, is that most of what you learn at this stage, that you're going to get your degree, whatever, your bachelor's in communications or whatever you're getting, is going to be out of date, within 10 or 20 years. I mean, think about when I was a college student in the 1980s, cable television was just emerging, and the internet hadn't even been invented or thought of yet. There's Facebook, TikTok, Snapchat, smartphones. None of those things even existed. So, if I was just going to rely on the fact that, I have a bachelor's degree from Stanford or a master's from Cal, and I know everything that I've done, that wouldn't get me very far, because of all, most of what's going to happen is out in front of you. So I think constantly learning, whether it's, attending webinars, reading industry newsletters and magazines, and, following people on LinkedIn, listening to podcasts, just constantly learning, as much as you can every day about the industry. Positive curiosity, that's the next one. I think it's important. I think it's really valuable to challenge the status quo, and to really be a real critical thinker about things. But whenever you challenge, it's so that people don't think of you as just an annoyance. Always try to offer solutions. So if you look at something and say, I think Quibi is a really silly idea. Why do people want to watch, pay $5 a month to watch video on their phones? In that same take, give a solution. Like, well, how could it have worked, or what should it have been? So positive curiosity is important. The next one's emotional intelligence, which I think is really super valuable. I don't know if a lot of people have heard of what it is, but it's basically self-awareness and self-management, and then sort of external political awareness and political management. What that means is that being aware of your own emotions and how you're feeling about things, like whether you're getting angry, whether you're sad, when you're working with other people, and then being able to manage yourself. So, you might get into situations where you feel like saying something, but you learn how to kind of hold your tongue, or how to manage your, kind of losing your temper about things. It's so, I think, important in terms of working with other people. And then understanding how to navigate the emotions of others, and understand how other people might be reacting and feeling about things that they're going through, or that you're saying. I think in the media and entertainment business, because it is such a creative business and such a collaborative business, it's so much about how people are feeling and emotionally about the work and about themselves. And it's not just, like, say, if you're in high tech, or just a coder, or maybe you're a scientist or something, where it's just about the stuff or the facts. It really is about all that sort of squishy human stuff in our industry. And speaking of the squishy stuff, servant leadership is another principle. Servant leadership, to me, is really getting things done through influencing and empowering other people, versus the leadership style of kind of leading. People use this term leading from the front, which I hate. I think that's, about dominating people and being on the pedestal, and the leader gets all the credit. And really the best leaders, I think, are leaders that people don't even realize are leading, that they're really there to help empower the people that they work with and push obstacles out of the way and let those people shine as much as they possibly can. And when you do, your team will succeed, and you'll get lots of credit because obviously the team will win, and people look back and say, oh, you guys did all this stuff. But if you're not doing it because you're trying to get fame, you're doing it because you really want other people to succeed. And the final lesson is I say don't color close to the lines. And what I mean by that, and we see it now with, whether it's the Me Too movement or just harassment, all these executives are getting into trouble, is it's really more important to do the right thing than it is to do things right. And I think always remember that ethics really do matter. And if something seems a little bit dicey or it's a little close to the edge, don't do it. Because when people do that, then the next thing that's close to the edge you end up doing, and then the thing after that, and the thing after that, and then you get into trouble. And I think it's always better to just realize that at the end of the day, it is about values. At least I think about being, about leaving this world, as being able to say, you were a good person and you made a difference and you made the world better, versus just success at all costs. Industry trends, two most important industry trends, I kind of touched on it a few minutes ago, and that was this changing consumer behavior, and then this changing audience demographic thing. And the changing consumption behavior, it's really interesting to me how some things stay the same. Like when I was growing up, there were four big media companies, what they call broadcast TV companies. It was CBS, ABC, NBC, and Fox. Today, there's still like four or five. Now it's Netflix, Amazon, sort of Disney, Hulu, HBO Max. So some things don't, the names change, but the consolidation and concentration of the industry probably will continue to stay. One thing for your careers is I think that the jobs always tend to follow the audience. So, if you were working in newspapers in the 1980s, the audience was moving to online. So it probably would have made sense to try to get a job, online instead of a newspaper. So where you want to go with your career is probably to be in the places where the audience is going to, rather than being in the places the audience is leaving. I saw a statistic from the McKinsey Institute that said that the share of total US jobs in entertainment hasn't changed much over 150 years. It's still, I think it was 6% of all US jobs. And so even going back to 1900, 6% of people were working in what's quote called entertainment. But the specific jobs obviously have changed dramatically. I mean, these people used to work in record stores. People used to work a lot in movie theaters. Now, you're video game designers, or you work in esports. So there'll always be jobs in media and entertainment forever. It's just that what we consider to be media and entertainment is going to really evolve a lot during your lifetimes, and you have to be really flexible about that. And then in terms of audience demographics, I think I've talked about that a lot. Diversity to me is no longer a niche; it's really part of the mainstream. I mean, you're really the first generation, I think, that will end diversity training. People talk about, we need sensitivity training or diversity training, but you guys live in a diverse. You kind of live it your whole life. So I don't think though you need any training. It's just including everybody is just kind of the way we all live. Another point is finding your fit. I talked about that thing about finding your passion and everything. And this, I want to get a little bit more specific about the roles in media. There are about 5 or 6 key buckets of roles within most media companies. There's the sort of the content area, people who make the content, that you see and experience. The people who market the content, who try to get you to engage with it. Then there are people who distribute the content, who get it out on platforms, in front of you. And then there are people who make money from the content, whether it's through selling sponsorships or advertising or subscriptions. And then of those 4 core groups, you've got the people who support all of them. So people that do financial support, those departments are called finance or legal or human resources or research. And your career is going to be in one of those buckets. And so it's key to kind of figure out what's the best place for you. And especially early in your career, through your internships and your early jobs, like, do you want to work in content? Do you want to work in sales and monetization? Or do you like finance? What function are you most passionate about? And also, what kind of personality type are you? Because different personality types and skill strengths can work I think in all areas, actually, but some are better for some and some are not as good for others. But it's not, it's a cliche to say that, like, creative people should work in content or analytical people should work in finance. Because I think I've seen analytical and sort of extroverted people who work in content production. They're like really systematic movie directors. And then I've seen people who are very creative, but yet they're very introverted and they work in sales. So, but I think it's just figuring out what's the best fit for you. Usually, top leaders at the end of the game, come from multiple paths. There's no real path to say that this is the way you become, a senior executive in the media industry. Some people come up through marketing, some come up through finance or legal or HR. There's no one best path. The last part I wanted to talk about was a little bit about NPR and what our strategy is. I touched on a little bit this idea of what our mission is, to make a more informed public, and how we try to raise the national IQ on events and ideas and cultures, and just kind of do the things that mainstream media just doesn't do as well. I mean, mainstream media is very driven, obviously, by commercial incentives because they're not public. So they tend to want to pick an audience and then super serve that audience, just like any other brand would try to do. So they've been very smart. I mean, Fox News, has picked an audience, more Republican, right-wing, and they super serve with content they love. MSNBC and CNN do the same thing. They've decided to go with the left progressive audience and super serve them. The New York Times has decided to go after more of a kind of a global elite, upscale audience who wants to subscribe to their news and serve them. So you've got people doing specific things for specific audiences. But if you're really just looking for kind of fact-based, non-biased storytelling and journalism about like what's really going on in the world, it's hard to find places that are that will do it in an unbiased way. And I think that's where NPR fits in, and that's why we were created 50 years ago, to just be that voice for things that are not driven by selling advertising or getting more readers. Though we have been doing it, I think, well, but not in terms of the content, but not well with the audience. We've really missed serving the full audience. I mean, you think about NPR, it's national public radio. The public part we failed on. So our big focus now is how do we reach that more diverse audience, and the key to me is doing it through digital platforms, because we know younger news and information consumers really rely on podcasts and mobile apps and Instagram feeds and Facebook and social platforms for their information more than they do newspapers and radio and traditional media. So we have really leaned into building out our YouTube presence. I mean, some of you may have heard of the Tiny Desk concert series that we started a few years ago. That's really popular on YouTube. And if you look at our Instagram page and the content we do there, and then we have several podcasts that we've launched, like Code Switch and It's Been a Minute and Throughline, that feature young producers and creators of color. So just bringing more diverse voices and storytelling to what we do. And we think that we can kind of create the next generation NPR that will pursue this mission with that looks more like all of America. So I think we got about 10 minutes left, so I want to make sure that I left time for some questions.
I have a question. It was really nice hearing you speak, so I appreciate you coming out here to speak to students about your career. I'm a rising sophomore, or I'm going to be a sophomore this year, and so I'm kind of interested in a career in media, so I was trying to figure out what's the best way to use my time after my freshman summer. And I found that a lot of news publications and news studios have requirements for students who are already juniors or seniors and have a major already focused on media and broadcast. So what's the best way, or what's the best area for like a freshman or a sophomore to look into in terms of careers in media?
Well, it's great that that you've got it figured out so early. You're always too, like they're almost like they're saying to you, you're too eager. It's like, come back when you're a junior. But you know what you can do is even if you can't work at the bigger places because they want you to be a little older, there are a lot of things that you can do just with other students and just with other creators on your own. To do media, like I tell the story about I don't know, a lot of you know Issa Rae, who's on the show Insecure, who's really popular. I mean, she started out making YouTube videos when she was a Stanford freshman and sophomore, and created a series called Awkward Black Girl that became really popular on YouTube. And she just got other students to like act in the videos, and they produced their own stuff. And so I think if you can't get that's what we did when we started the Campus Entertainment Board years ago. It's like, if you can't get a job with a real company, just make your own and do your own stuff, as a student.
Michael, I would like to thank you again for coming out and sharing all of this. I've been taking notes madly. Such good information. I was just wondering what creative things you're doing outside of your work now. Are you still playing in a band? Are you making films?
Yeah, I still have I'll bring it up. I still have my guitar. So I still play, for my 5-year-old daughter, and just for myself. But I don't have as much time to do. Yeah, I think that's what changed it. I think I haven't recorded anything since my daughter was born, because all of a sudden those like 5 or 6 hours a night that you have to yourself are gone. But she loves music, and so I'm like crossing my fingers that in another 2 or 3 years from now, she will start playing guitar, and then she will start to dance, and then I can be like the
hey, Dad.
Like Beyonce's mother.
Hi, Michael. Thank you for your time. I wanted to ask about like work-life balance, kind of on that topic. So I'm like a senior. I've done like a consulting internship. I'm looking to go back, but I think eventually I do want to do something that's like creative and business, like you were talking about. And I think the work-life balance in consulting, like, wow, it's pretty interesting. And there's definitely roles like in media, et cetera. It's just pretty crazy, as you probably know. So I was wondering, like, if you find that aspect of your life like better now after being like part of a company and doing a media role.
Yeah, I think the work-life balance is something that it goes in phases in your life. For me, I really chose to, I think when I was really young, and I was in sales and doing something that wasn't like maybe as creatively rewarding. I worked like 8 hours a day, but then I spent another 8 hours after that doing music and photography and other stuff. So my life was pretty much all between those two things. I didn't have much of a personal life. And then once I got into a more creative role, I started working longer hours because I just loved what I was doing. And then I did get married, that gave a little bit more balance, but I still was pretty much, my wife she was going to graduate school. She has a PhD. And so we both were pretty much all into work. And then it wasn't until we got into our late 40s, that we decided to have kids. So we took a different path. And now our lives are much more balanced because, I love the fact that I can spend a lot of time with kids. So I think, each person has to decide what's right for them. I don't think there is an answer. I don't think there's 100% balance. I think you have to make choices along the way. And so you may decide for a while, I'm going to spend the next 10 years just really buckling down and moving through the consulting world and learning a ton of stuff and making a lot of money. And then I'm going to back off and then spend, the next 5 years, starting a family. And then I'm going to, when my kids are in school again, then I'm going to go back, hardcore again. But I think you just have to kind of thread it over look at it as like a long 40, 50-year journey and different phases of it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's helpful.
Hi. Oh.
No, go ahead.
Okay. Hi, Michael. Thank you so much for your talk. Like, I took a lot of notes. Thank you. I just have a quick question. Well, maybe someone else can relate to this, but this generation, or like my friends who are in the same age group, we feel this pressure that we're not doing enough and we're not moving fast enough. And this is related to the tip that you said, to take your time, find your passion, and pick one. But I think everything else with social media and everything we're exposed to, there's something telling us that we're not moving fast enough, or we're not doing enough, and time is going by. So what key advice can you give?
Yeah, I would say just relax and realize that it's a long, long road. It's harder to see when you're young because it's just a practical thing. When you're 23 years old, every year of your life is a lot bigger chunk of your life than when you're 73 years old. So it seems like a big deal. It's like, I can see it with a 5-year-old. It's like, she thinks, 20 minutes is like forever. So that's just natural that when you're young, you're going to think that. But if you put it in perspective that, you are going to be an adult, for the next probably 50, at least 50 to 60 years, and you've only really been an adult now for, 2, so you can take a beat, if you don't get something done in the next 2 or 3 years, not the end of the world. You still got your 30s and your 40s and your 50s and your 60s and your 70s. And look at, Joe Biden and Donald Trump, they're in their 70s, and they're running for president, so there's plenty of time. And there's no need to be to worry. But it's hard. I know it because I was felt the same way when I was young. That's why I was running around like, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, I gotta do that. But it's funny. I think about like when I'm now as a older person, and I'll be in a job, let's say for 4 years or 5 years, and it doesn't seem like that long of a time in what we've accomplished in those 4 years in that job. And then I think back to myself, oh my God, 4 years, that was my entire college career. I got a college degree in that whole time, And in the real adult life, 4 years is very short. It's kind of like maybe the people who started Netflix, like Ted Sarandos and Reed Hastings, and they started that company like 23 years ago. And for them, it's like this their project, and they're still working on that project. And it was 23 years. Kids have been grown, been born, gone to college. And to them, they feel like they're still just starting, doing things at Netflix. So, don't oversweat it.
Thank you.
Hi, I have 2 questions if you don't mind. So you mentioned diversity, and I had a question as far as being a person of color. Do you have any advice for when you're in a room with people that may not want to hear your advice? You mentioned like Bon Appetit, they didn't necessarily take your advice. Do you have any suggestions for how to address that in the future? I definitely agree with you. I think situations, especially within the media industry, are getting more diverse and people are open to it. But there is still kind of that odd feeling, if you're the only woman in the room, if you're the only person of color. And so that was a really long-winded question, but do you have any advice related to that?
I think it's hard because if you're in a situation where people don't buy it, the value of diversity, you can be respectful and try to make the arguments as best as you can, but maybe you have to try to find an environment where people get it, because it's going to be frustrating, and I've been in those situations before, and I think the best thing to do is to leave and go to other places. And the good thing is that there are enough places now that are starting to really get it that you don't have to just put up with it. I think that's why you hear so much so many people speaking up now and speaking out. I think for years, many of us, whether you're a woman or person of color or whatever, people just kind of kept their heads down and just dealt with microaggressions, just kept their mouth shut because, you want a job, you want to do well. There's nothing, where else can you go? It's like, it's the same at Warner Brothers, it's the same at Fox, it's the same at this place. But I think now that there's a reckoning going on, that you don't have to put up with it, anymore as much. So.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting and really inspiring to see how many companies are taking on, diversity, equity, and inclusion chairs and committee members and stuff like that. So I definitely think it's something to look forward to. And the second question I had is, I know that as an executive, you probably don't work with interns as much, but is there any qualities that you see in interns that you think like these are the people that end up staying on, or they do well, and there's recognizable traits among these certain people?
Yeah, I think with interns, I wouldn't over stress yourself on like making a huge impression or like, because it's so early in the game. To me, internships are just an opportunity for you to just learn and get exposure and just see how the world works and just see how people, see how the grown-ups, I guess, play. And that's it. And you're only there for 3 months and you're only working on little projects. It's not like you are a full-time employee. It's going to be, there for years and the company's investing lots of money in you and all that kind of stuff. So I would just say, come in, learn as much as you can, meet as many people as you can, have as many informational one-on-ones with as many people. Cause now you've got an entree, you're in the building. So now you're in the network, you're on the email chain. Now just use that to just pick people's brains as much as you can. And that's all you really need. Because I wouldn't think of it like, I'm going to go be an intern. I think it's very rare that people who are interns actually become full-time employees of the places that they intern at. That's not the goal. The goal is really just to learn the industry. And then, and then eventually when you finish school, you'll apply for real jobs, for real people.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Any more questions for Michael?
Is there a way to follow up with you?
Yeah. I'm on LinkedIn. Just Michael Smith. If you put in Michael Smith NPR, I'm sure I'll come up. And I'm really good about responding to messages. So yeah, just message me there.
All right. Well, Michael, thank you so much for your time today and your insight and career advice. I took a bunch of notes too, and I've known Michael for a long time. So I wanted to remind everybody that One Day Immersion, we're actively getting our schedule together for our fall conference. Obviously, we won't be in person, but we are doing a virtual conference, and we're very excited about that. Michael's actually helping build the day. So wanted to remind you to put November 13th on your calendars. We'll be sending out more announcements over the next probably 3 to 4 weeks, and or in the next 3 to 4 weeks. And we hope that that you join us. And get your questions ready and participate. We want to make it really interactive for you. So everyone, stay safe, wear the mask, and just we're in this together. And if you need anything from me, you can reach me at dolly@onedayimmersion.com too. But thank you everyone so much for your time today, and take care.